The Roots of Success podcast is for the landscape professional who's looking to up their game. We've got a brain trust of experts to help you nurture the roots of a successful business and grow to the next level. This is the Roots of Success.
Welcome to another great episode of Roots of Success podcast, and I'm your host, Tommy Cole. We have an awesome guest today. I've got my good friend, Kyle Cahill from Houston, Texas. How are you, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Tommy. I am really excited too. Got butterflies. I'm ready to go, man.
Who knew we'd be here 15 years later, just on a show talking about shop and business and life? I would have never imagined this in a million years. Kyle and I go way back all the way in 2009. We worked for the same company in Dallas, and we shared an office the size of, I don't know, was that 10 by 10, the size of a small bedroom?
Oh, it was. I think the back of our chairs just used to hit each other every time we tried to stand up.
Yep. Oh, I was like, wow, this is going to be interesting. I remember we're both project managers. I was the construction kind of project manager that handled mostly subcontractors.
Yep.
And, medium to large scale jobs. And you handled all the crews and the planting project manager side. And we worked hand in hand on hundreds of projects for a long, long time. And so, I don't know, we considered ourselves probably the best dynamic duo there was in Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm going to put that up there.
I will second that. We were a hell of a team.
Yeah, we were awesome.
And we had a lot of fun doing it. We learned a lot doing it. Yeah. So that was a great time.
I would say we screwed up a lot. I mean, we screwed up a ton, and we were like, we got to remember this. We got to add it to our process and system. And we just got better and better over the years. So Kyle is coming from Houston, Texas. No harm, no foul, about the Astros and those crazy maroon things that are in College Station. Beside all of that, he's a really good dude, good father, a good husband, and a really good business owner. That's why he's on here today. So Kyle, tell us about Grow & Co. company out of Houston.
Yeah, well, Tommy, I, again, am so excited to be here and talk with you and talk about Grow & Company and what we've done and share that with everybody. So Grow & Company, we started in December of 2016, about 2 weeks before my first daughter was born.
Wow.
So my wife and I just decided, hey, now's the time, let's do it.
Rip the Band-Aid off and let's go.
Yes. So we are a high-end residential design, build, and maintenance firm located within Houston and primarily operate only in Houston, although we do have design projects as far away as Santa Fe, New Mexico. But a lot of our work in-house stays relatively close to the Houston area. So that's our primary focus. One thing unique about our firm is that we operate primarily on a time and materials basis on primarily most scopes of work that we do. So I'm excited to talk more about that and explore that.
This is great. It's funny how we all work together for a number of years and we learn, and then all of a sudden you pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And say, I think I'm going to start this thing myself. It always sounds easy at first because you're like, I can do this. But when it's your own dime and nickel, it's a little bit different story. So, I'm sure there were some hard days getting started with you and probably a crew, to speak, right? Tell us about just getting the business started before we get into that T&M thing I really want to talk about.
Yeah, we worked on some pretty high-profile clients' homes and commercial projects. And so, I went from multi-million-dollar projects and managing a department that was north of $15 million in revenue to back to the basics, to myself. And going back to all of a sudden, I'm the one who's contracting out 10 flats of seasonal color. I'm installing them myself. I really had that opportunity in that first year of starting Grow & Company of what I like to always refer back to is getting back to the basics. So getting my hands dirty, being loyal to my soil, really building myself back up from the fundamentals. And that's really how Grow & Company was born. It was born out of just getting back to the basics. I worked primarily out of my house and within my neighborhood and my neighbors, and I took one project at a time. Did a lot of the, one-man show, owner-operator. My wife continued to work. She's a PA in the emergency room. So she bankrolled Growing Company to make sure
Yeah.
that we would stay financially viable
Whew.
as we learned our
God
lessons.
bless her. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, she's honestly the reason why we were able to stay in business for that first year to 18 months.
Good. So Kyle, we're all dying to hear, and our audience doesn't know much about you.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the coolest, amazing things about Grow & Co. is you're known as this guy called the T&M success. And if nobody knows what that is, that's time and materials. Everything you do from a maintenance perspective is time and materials. Yes. So whatever it takes to do the time and whatever materials are added, that's how you do the maintenance services. That's a lot. Different than the norm, 100% different than the norm. What made you go into that route?
That's a great question because, I had cut my teeth in this business in the contracting world, right? You get a call from a client, they request your services, you go over, you give them a proposal, and hey, this is everything that's going to be in this proposal divided by 12. Here's your monthly charge. And that's how I just assumed that work was done. And that's when I first started Growing Company, how I did it myself. I took what I had learned and applied it to how I was going to do it. After a year in business with Growing Company, I had the opportunity I was growing and I needed a place to park my truck and trailer other than my driveway because my neighbors were like, you got to get out of here. And so I was fortunate enough to be introduced to two gentlemen, Robert Glauser and Danny McNair, who owned a residential landscape firm in Houston since 1991 called Glauser McNair. And they were looking to retire. They wanted to sell the business. I wasn't sure if that was something I wanted to do to acquire a business. I just needed to get out of my driveway to appease my neighbors. So I was introduced to them. And I always like to say, we moved in together before we got married. And so
I'm going to assume they had the T&M success.
They did.
Okay. Yep.
And they were a smaller firm, anywhere from $1.5 million to $2.5 million, kind of fluctuating. And, they were towards the end of their careers. And they had gotten past the point of, I need the big revenue numbers. They wanted to do high quality work and they wanted to be paid well for it. So when I like to say I moved in before we got married, I moved in December of 2017 and we finalized the acquisition in June of 2018. So at that point, I acquired a book of business that was used to this model. They were used to the T&M aspect of it. So I took that and I saw what that really meant. It allowed the crews to deliver a high detail, high touch service. It allowed the managers to say yes more than, well, let me get you a change order. It really allowed my team to say yes, as opposed to, well, let me see. And so I understood that, I had to learn this model and I had to learn how to best implement it because I understood that it could be a barrier for growth. And I made the conscious decision that, I really don't care if it's a barrier for growth because I want to be paid fairly for the services that we're providing. And then in turn, pay my team really well and provide benefits and a work environment that they want to be at. And so contrary to popular belief, we have grown substantially within that model. And the slogan I always tell clients is like, hey, this is not a blank checkbook, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a price and I'm going to give you a budget. We're going to operate on budgets and invoice on actuals. All right. So I can't go to a scheduling board with our software and schedule out these visits with no hours to it. No, our production team needs to know, hey, you have 2 hours at the Smith residence. You have 1 hour at the Johnson residence. We have to schedule it that way. But if that client comes out and says, hey, Kyle, I want you guys to spend another 30 minutes in the backyard where we had this situation. Well, that's 30 minutes times 3 guys. You've got another hour and a half. Hey, my guys can say yes, as opposed to, I can only be here for 2 hours, so we're going to have to go. So we set all that up on the front end. We let the client know what our hourly rates are, how we're going to bill it. And what we started doing, and it's been fun, is that we get to show our clients how we are over delivering for them. We're actually coming in under budget and showing them, hey, this is what we told you it was going to cost. This is actually what it's costing. And because if it rains all week, guess what? You don't get charged for that visit that week.
Yeah.
So I always have found it, and I found it to be a win-win for both the contractor and the client. Because if they ask us for anything more, hey, it's understood. You're going to get charged for it. Just like if you're at a fancy hotel, if you call them and say, hey, you know what? I want a bottle of champagne. The Ritz-Carlton's going to send it to your room, and it's just understood. You're paying for that.
Well,
right?
let me see if I can build a change order for that.
Yeah. So we've taken that from the maintenance side. That's how we run our design department. That's how we run our construction department. And so, yeah, we've again, I always say, hey, it may at some point be a barrier for growth. We haven't reached that ceiling yet, and we've had great responses from our clients with it.
So I got some questions. You said something fascinating. Operate on budgets and what?
Invoice on actuals.
Okay, I love it. So here's my question. What's the client's response when you say this? This is not the normal. Are they really intrigued by it? Do they question it? Or
Sure.
they're like, wow, I've never heard that. Explain more, or see how things go.
Yeah. Every single thing you just said, I've had that response.
So is your team prepared for that sort of elevator pitch type?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's another aspect, right? Is a lot of the people that we're recruiting and bringing on have not operated within this model as well. So it's training them. And in fact, again, it's empowering them to really satisfy their clients' needs and go above and beyond, because there's not that barrier. We have that framework to work within.
Yeah.
We are going to be our clients' biggest advocates, and they're trusting us to take care of their landscape. And if that means they need a service to treat a fungus that's going to go ahead and wipe out their St. Augustine lawn, we're going to take care of it. And we're going to tell you in our contract beforehand, like, we're going to take care of this. Otherwise, if I've got to call you, we're talking about replacement. That's a lot more expensive. So we have had all those responses from clients, Tommy. A lot of it has been well, let's see how that goes. And it's been very, very successful so far.
I love it. I love it. So if a client calls in or referral comes in, there's probably, I don't know what you guys call it, but maybe an intake form or a question or something to say, is this our ideal client that we always talk about? Tell me about that. I'm sure you have something similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime that we have an inquiry come across, typically if it's referral or just seeing our work, it always starts off with that phone call, because what we want to explain to them is who we are, what kind of a service that we provide, and if you're going to find value in the service that we provide. If you are looking for that flat rate every month and somebody to mow, blow, and come in, that's not going to be for us. If you want that relationship, if you want that high touch, you find value in that, and you find value in a team that knows what they're doing, that shows up when they say they're going to show up, that's important to you, then we're going to be the firm, to continue this conversation with. And then at that same conversation, we talk about the T&M model, what that looks like and what that means. Mm-hmm. Because at no time do we want to surprise a client when we put a contract down and say, oh, by the way, it's T&M. We never want to surprise.
Yeah, so true. So also, now we talked about the front end, the expectation, maintaining the property, the install, but I know people are asking, well, what about the back end? Like, who's collecting all the data to invoice it quick enough to keep cash flow and all that? Is that an intense process, or you guys have that sort of dialed in? That's got to be decent.
Yeah.
Learning curve?
We've gotten better. It is still something. So when we went to 6 years ago, when I was implementing an operations software, I really had to find something that was not going to let anything hide, right? So what I mean by that is you can't vary costs. Like if we purchase something, it's the software is telling you, where does this cost go? Where does this cost go? Where do these man hours go? We have learned a lot over the years, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and we've made those mistakes to where, hey, we tell the client up front, this is T&M, but also, right, if you don't communicate with the client that you are going over budget, well, you got to put yourself in the client's shoes. You need to prepare clients that you're spending their money, as opposed to just on the back end saying, well, we told you it was T&M. No, we have to have a trust relationship with our clients. So we have learned the hard way, and we have implemented systems and processes going forward where it's like, hey, team, we know this is new for everybody, but just because we say it's T&M doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want there. it hasn't been terrible, but we've gotten our butts kicked a couple times and had to eat crow and say, hey, we're going to stand behind this. We should have told you. We'll do better next time. And then we learn from it and we move on.
Yeah. Communication is key in any business.
Yes.
Especially landscaping and service industry, especially time and materials, because you can't use T&M as an excuse to go spend money, right? So now you're more cautious to the client because I go, yeah, we've got to communicate because I know it's going to happen. If I just get an invoice and send it, they're going to ask questions. So now you're really having to be methodical and think about that and communicate it because you know it's going to come if you don't.
Well, and Tommy, I think one important thing to keep in mind too is that really in a contracted business too, right? Say you had 2 hours at the Smith residence. Well, if you're on the high end, high touch client, if they ask you to spend 30 more minutes, typically that garden manager is going to accommodate a client request. How many times does that 30 minutes get added to that work team? Doesn't. It doesn't. And so really what I find is that's where I keep saying it's fair to the client, it's fair to the contractor, because we will absolutely do that for you. Understand you add time, it adds costs, we're going to build it. So it has helped with communication a ton. And as a matter of fact, it puts the onus more so on that garden manager to make sure they are communicating, right? Yes. Because they know, oh, additional costs are coming. I better let my client know because at Grown Company, we will invoice that. Yep. And, or I'm going to be asked what happened here.
You got to provide an explanation. Love it. The next topic, Kyle, I would love to discuss. This is an interesting one. I love it a lot. I follow you on social media. I listen to you all the time on other, presentations, and you've done some other podcasts that you're a guest on. And I'm watching you behind the scenes. As I do all of my clients I talk with and meet with every year and every month. And I also just watch. I watch and observe what goes on, good, bad, ugly. And what I've observed over time with Grow & Co. is this thing that I'm going to call it master gardeners. And I love the fact that you're putting so much time and effort into this because this is essentially a career. It's not mow and blow as fast as you can to make a quick buck. You are literally like professional organization, no different than the NFL football team, no different than a law firm, none of that. And you're sustainable. You take your time, you do the right thing. You're loyal to your soil. Explain that.
Sure.
Am I right on the right page of where we're going? Because that's what I see from the outside looking in.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that that's something you see because
it's working, right?
It's working. So the message is getting across. We want to be the value in hiring Grown Company is our knowledge and our specialization and our experience. I consider all of our frontline to be true tradespeople, right? They know their craft. They get on a pair of hedge pruners and the way that they are shaping a hedge, it's a work of art, and as, promoting from within and having that knowledge work its way up into the management part of the business, we really want people to be excited about horticulture and what we do, because that's what our clients are really looking to us for, is really being experts in that. And the level of gardens and landscapes that we work in requires that of us as well. Now, we don't know everything and we're learning, and that's why we have continuous education and we train from within, but that's really important to us. And it's really, really essential for your success working here at Grown Company. And the be loyal to your soil, that was something that we came up with and actually trademarked it because I loved it so much.
Oh, there you go.
That it worked on a lot of levels, right? From the sustainable standpoint, be loyal to your soil. I mean, a lot of the research, a lot of the implementations of big, large landscape projects, it's all about what's going on in the soil, the microbiology, having it be alive. Because you can't, you plant a $1 plant in a $5 hole. That's the slogan. That's what we like to say. So it's from the actual soil, but be loyal to your soil in terms of our community, our company. Like, we're loyal to each other on the ground that we stand on. We're loyal in that respect as well. So,
well, it's an attraction. If I'm in high school looking to get into the landscape world, I'm attracted to Grow & Co. for that reason, because it's an absolute career to come in. You can come in from the ground up and work your way and be very trained and mentored along the way, as this is a professional career, which we should all take that extremely seriously.
Yeah.
I hate the word, slamming shrubs in the ground and mow and blow, all these terms that are sort of thrown out there in our industry. And I think what you're doing, and I know what you're doing, is you're putting this up on a pedestal. That's something that you can set your career on and be there forever. And so you're attracting those types of people into your organization, which is great.
Yeah.
All right. This is a weird one. You ready for this, Kyle? This is a great. So we're talking about culture a lot of times, and everyone's got a culture. Period. End of story. Yeah. Just depends on what side of the spectrum your culture is. The good, the bad, in between, I'm not sure. Depending on the day that I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, that's our culture. You made an interesting announcement to your team, I think about a year ago, this time last year, roughly. And I witnessed it and I said, ooh, that's an interesting one. There's this thing called the 4-day work week, 980 schedule.
Yes.
You got to tell me what your thoughts behind all this. What is it and how was the outcome?
Sure. So you are correct. We implemented this about a year ago and we trialed it. We told the entire team this 980 schedule, we're going to try it for 3 months. If we see that it is negatively impacting our ability to generate revenue, our profitability, just the culture in general, then it's going away. But this is important, and here's why it's important. Tommy, from our early days in working in this industry, it can be daunting. You can burn out. You've got ups and downs, especially in construction. When it's crazy busy, it's crazy busy. And looking at how the world and people in general are evolving, I wanted to make sure that we were staying on the forefront of that while we were young as a company. The 980 schedule came out of a conversation with our leadership team about trying to address this. How are we going to address the potential for team members to be overworked? How do we create a culture and an environment where we support the family, we support the life outside of work? I don't like the term work-life balance because I don't necessarily buy into the meaning behind that. I always like to say work-life integration, because when you are working, you are also living. If your wife calls you, you're going to call her back on a work day, right? We aren't just shutting it off and turning it on. We are integrating our work in our life. That's just, if we got to be honest.
Love it. Love it.
And then, so the 980 schedule came from actually our controller. Her husband works at Shell. And they run off a 980 schedule. So I was like, tell me more. So 980 stands for over a 9-day period. So a typical work week, Monday through Friday, 5 days. So over 9 days, so 1 week is 5 days, the next week is 4. You work 80 hours. So that gives you 1 day off every other week. We have decided to give Monday off every other week. So we have 2 teams. So we had to really figure this out because we're a high-end residential company. We need to be available to our clients. We can't just say, hey, we're closed, right?
Right.
We're not there to help you. We have to always have somebody on call. So we have 2 teams, blue and white. That's our company colors. We have a team blue, we have a team white. Your counterpart is off on that day. So for example, you can't have all garden managers off. We have 4 garden managers, 2 off, 2 on those Mondays, so that we can handle calls and get responses. So what that equates to was an additional 26 days off per client. This is middle management, salaried employees that get this. An additional 26 days off per year, almost a month, no cut in pay, and establishing that 3-day weekend every other week. I mean, for me personally, I partake in this. It has been incredible. I mean, heck, my birthday was on Monday. And it was
happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. It was my day off. So I was like, hey, this is great. I'm not working on my birthday.
So next year, your day off will be on Tuesdays, right?
Yeah, now I'll switch it.
You'll switch it.
But it has been extremely, extremely impactful. And I'm excited as we continue to develop it, because I do feel like it's an additional recruiting tool that we offer, that we are understanding, that we are ahead of the curve, that we know how to manage it in this respect. And so it's been successful so far. We're about to wrap up year 1, and I feel like the feedback we've gotten from the team has has been wonderful. So that's how that came about. And I'm excited to continue on that track.
Burnout is real in this industry. It is so real. We're compared to construction. Landscape, I've always said this for years, is really one of the toughest professions to get in because it demands so much 12 months a year.
Yep.
There's really no off season. It's every day, and you're battling weather, training, the labor force, materials, sensitive materials, deliveries, everything you could ever imagine is thrown in your face. Other trades, and it's just like we keep going and going and going, but the beat down is pretty real in our industry, and there's a high turnover ratio in that. So I love the fact that you've figured out a way to say, here's a few extra days off. Here's a good amount of extra days off, but make sure you put in the work. Right. So you're not sacrificing your client's time and the business's time. You're still putting it, but you're making sure that you're forcing people to take the PTO, kind of. Right.
And I'll tell you one unintended consequence that we've learned from this that I was not planning on was when you have your Monday off, you don't want to be bothered. So you are preparing and you are communicating so that you are not bothered. So I find that the team members are actually communicating and preparing better so that they don't have to bother their counterpart when they're off.
Yes.
It's kind of like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's like, hey, if anything comes up, I'm going to take care of it for you, but make sure you've got all your stuff in order so I'm not picking up the pieces.
Yeah. Very team oriented, right? So if someone was to leave, you could observe that or handle the issues, but you could also get it from a different manager's perspective. If you had to go meet or resolve a problem, hey, I had to deal with this, this is what I saw in the property. This is what I'm seeing in the communication. You could kind of feed off of each other. Very team oriented dynamic in that aspect. Love it.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. What happens to PTO?
So that remains the same.
Okay.
That all remains the same. So our PTO program, so this, you reference PTO. This is not considered PTO. This is just schedule.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Is anyone else doing the same thing as that?
Other companies. I don't know about landscape firms, and I'm sure there are. I just, I don't know of them. I think maybe in the South, because to your point, like in landscaping in the South, it doesn't stop, right? There's no snow season. It's just, there's hurricane season. But so I don't know about in the South.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Next big topic. This thing called a facility.
Ooh.
Everyone's doing it. Oh my gosh. I have heard it. I'm going to build a new facility, Tommy. I'm cash strapped. What do I do? Is it a 2-bay? Is it a 3-bay? Do I cover the vehicles? Do I not? How much office space? It's too small. It's too big. Drainage. It is like it, and we're not even good at that. We're good at doing the landscape, let alone being the owner of a general contractor building, something that you can envision. It's hard. Tell me about what you've done there. I think there's some good attributes to that. Very sustainable, very eco-friendly type building. But tell me some of the lessons learned so our audience can understand and maybe get a few nuggets out of this.
Right. So, first things first is the location. So I spent about 2 years finding the right piece of property because it had to be of size. I had to have a certain size, had to be affordable, and it had to have the right location in terms of getting to our job sites. Because going to our T&M, all of our drive time is billed to the client. And so it was my responsibility to find a piece of property that wasn't going to double that and still have quick access to our clients. So I think looking back at it, there's two main things I would have done. One, the bank told me the next time I do this, hire a general contractor. Don't just spend the extra money to have somebody be your general contractor on this. We all business owners think that we can do it all ourselves, and hey, we contract these big construction landscape projects. I can do my own.
Yeah,
well, you can, but you don't have the time to do that.
Yeah,
and that's the wrong place to have your focus.
So focus on the business, right, and manage the team to build it. Okay,
correct. So that would be my priority. Like I would redo that because it burned me out. By the time we moved in, I needed a break, and it burned me out.
Yep.
And then the second is hire movers to move. Your team does not need to be moving of anything other than their stuff on their desk.
Yeah.
And that goes for the frontline team and your management team. You know, we all like to think, okay, we have all of these employees that we don't have to pay to move. Well, when I look at, okay, it would have cost me $5,000 to hire movers to get us all over here versus how much I spent in our own labor and missed opportunity, it was stupid. So I would say those two things: get a general contractor, hire movers, focus on the business and keep the business rolling.
Love it. So tell me about the building and the layout and the land.
Yeah.
A little more detail on that.
Sure. So we have a master plan for the facility. Currently, we had 4 buildings planned. And now that we've moved in, it's great because I'm glad I didn't build them all at once because we need.
Well, that's interesting, Kyle, because you're taking it like a phase by phase. So like live in it, taste it, smell it, understand it,
right?
Build another building, and then okay.
Yep. And so that's one of the biggest things is that had I just gone whole hog and built everything I thought I needed, I would have way overbuilt and been out a lot more capital than we currently are. And now that we've lived in it now for a year, it's completely changed. I need one other building for office. And then we need to focus more on our shop and expanding that out. So we had the capabilities to be able to move into basically a smaller footprint and see how we live in it and build from there. So, you know, our property, we moved from like 1.5 acres to 3 acres. And really, as we're developing the campus, this is kind of fun. A lot of our native and sustainably and regionally appropriate plant material, about half of our lot is unused. Okay. And so we are treating that as, you know, native coastal prairie here in Houston and seeing what's coming up. We're identifying plant material. We're knocking out invasives. We're trying to see how we can implement this in a residential setting so that we can start, you know, our mission is how do we reduce the coverage of lawns in the landscape in the resident? What are we supplementing that with? How can we be the leader in our market to do that? Because if somebody wants to do that, they're going to call Grown Company. And then how do we get clients and potential clients out to our facility to see what we can do, to see how we can do it, and also make it a great place for the employees to work and have it be aesthetically pleasing. We're building we just finished the design of what's Grown Co Fields. So we're going to have a community garden that we all partake in and we all grow from the front line to the management. And we get to take home fresh produce. Wow. But that's also something you could pick some produce and bring it to your client, organically grown. You know, just kind of have that whole holistic approach to what we do. It just goes back to like, we are horticulture nerds. That's what we love. So
yeah, that's great. So the next couple of buildings are going to be based off of what your need is, along with a learning and growing development. That's what we talked about earlier, was just the sustainability, you know, take your time, understand the horticulture side of the business, a big training ground for your employees, onboarding 2 new team members about the importance of this facility. It's not just about asphalt and 4 walls and a roof, and you go crazy, right? So, and the idea, tell me about the experience of bringing a client there. What's your vision? Is something more of like a design, build, client maintenance thing to show and tell and understand, maybe get to know the feeling of the team? But that's very impressive.
Yeah, so typically the clients that we invite out here are going to be more of our design build type of clients. And, you know, we have a design area of our building, we have our conference room, and we can show them when we're talking about, hey, we want to implement some native areas of your landscape, some raised planters, some more native type of plant materials. I mean, we have complete pollinator beds that are planted out here, and seeing the different textures and the insects that live within those, and really get clients excited on the front end, because a lot of times they hear that and they think just sticks and weeds, you know, but it's really not. And we can show them that tangibly rather than just tell them that. It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. So tell me about your 3 daughters. Are they just going to run the ship when you go away?
Hopefully soon.
You're involved with them a lot. I love to see the videos and the footage of the pollinators and the gardens and the community action with the kids, not just your kids, but all the family's kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone just being involved. It truly is a little, community within a community.
Yeah. So I have 3 daughters, Annie, Olivia, and Amelie, and they're 2, 5, and 7. And of course, they're inspiring to me, and I want them to be really involved as much as they can in the fun part of the business right now, which is that gardening, which is the pollinators, which are the pollinators. And we started this publication called Grow & Co Kids. It's a quarterly mailer, that they're a big part of in terms of what kind of content do we want to put in this mailer. And we send it out to all of our clients, kids, grandkids, for free as part of them being a client of Grown Company. And it's coloring pages, it's word searches, but it's also teaching them. So we've had our spring and our summer go out, focusing on pollinators, focusing on Texas wildflowers, because our mission is to get the kids outside. Go outside, go look at this stuff, go find these things. There's native areas and parks around Houston to really get out and explore. So we're trying to encourage that next generation to be interested in the green industry and what it is we can offer, so that in 15 years we have more people interested in what we're doing, so that we can all benefit and grow our businesses.
Love it. Wow. There's so many takeaways. I think we'll have to have another episode of just the Tommy's takeaways, but I'm going to try to do my best to sort of condense this. The Tommy takeaways are fascinating. I have a bunch of circles on this. We talked about T&M success. You sort of set the bar pretty high unintentionally because you acquired the business. But my takeaway is we operate on budgets and invoice on actuals. Love it. You have a specific defined client, and when they call in or get a referral, you're sort of kind of figuring out if they're the right person and the right client. You have a sort of intake form you go through, and my biggest thing is communicating about the budget on the front end. I love it. So if you're going to go to that route, or if you don't go to the T&M route, those are some really good nuggets for your business.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you've defined your team. It's no different in football and baseball and sports and businesses, whatever you say. Like, what defines you? You guys are defined as master gardeners, horticulturists, professionals in the landscape industry, because I'm looking at a picture of your team, rather old, so you need a new one, Kyle.
Okay.
Heads up. Very uniformed, very family environment, very accountable team. They love their job. I love the loyalty to your soil. You're all about the tradespeople. You're all about growing within. That's what creates the whole master gardening. The 4-day work week is unbelievable. I love it. God, I think I need to integrate that into my business. Seriously, I could use an extra day to make a doctor's appointment or go mow some grass for a couple hours and get my mind off things. But I love it because you have this great culture that you're committed to your team, and you're figuring out ways of not to be burned out in the landscape industry. So my tuition is figure out ways to become creative and inviting as an organization, because it's tough. The new office, you've learned everything, all the what not to do's, but I love the fact that you are building this in phases and more of a compound community type atmosphere, sort of live and learn it a little bit. And you're be cognizant of your time and your money spent on that, because you're understanding it versus looking at the back end and go, well, I should have done this.
Yeah.
Great takeaways. Kyle, I always look for some last minute advice from our hosts. I love the fact that I just love to work hard and grind and love what you do and your passion. That's why we're both sitting here today. What do you live and die by? Any sort of last minute suggestions and advice for our audience?
Golly, I have a lot of it. But I would say one of the biggest things that here recently is that it takes time to build something great. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's incremental. And you have to look for those little wins, and you have to build on those little wins, build a strong foundation. And by the time you know it, you'll be doing something great. But
Yeah.
build one step at a time, one step
Yeah.
at a time.
Love it. It's a marathon. It's a journey. You're not going to figure it out day one. Don't overthink it. I learned something new the other day, and it's done versus perfection.
Yeah.
Just got to get it done, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to live and learn at the end of the day. Man, Kyle, it's been great. We've got a lot of history together.
Yeah.
I'll never forget our tiny little office with 5 project managers. You and I were awesome, just pounding it hard. And
Yeah.
we'd sneak in a Whataburger every now and then. Fast food, I think those days are long gone for me and you, especially your family. Those days are long gone. But
Jimmy John's. It was Jimmy John's.
And Jimmy John's around the corner. You would grab it because they were super freaky fast, right?
Yep.
Because you had no time to eat lunch. It was just,
we had stuff to do.
Good stuff, Kyle. It's been a pleasure. We're going to have to do this again, maybe like a yearly Grow & Co. update, which would be kind of fun. And we'll go from there.
All right, Tommy. It was great catching up with you, buddy.
Thank you.
Ready to take the next step? Download our free Profitability Scorecard to quickly create your own baseline financial assessment and uncover the fastest ways to improve your business. Just go to mcfarlandstanford.com/scorecard to get yours today. To learn more about McFarland Stanford, our best-in-class peer groups, and other services, go to our website at mcfarlandstanford.com, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time on The Roots of Success.